Okay, my task is today to speak about the co-design, and I will draw your attention on how we addressed this in SALAM MED. So co-design is a fuzzy word with good intents. Many researchers are using this word in different domains of applications. And I will go briefly through a critical review of the diversity of understanding of the co-design in science, focusing the attention on the theory-informed research practice and not just practice. And trying to document co-design practices showed a diversity of roles of researchers. And I will finalize my intervention on some recommendations for future research pathways. So this is what we are doing in SALAM MED. Our theory is about our epistemology is about constructivism. We see problems as socially constructed, not just as real world. And we also rely on hybrid knowledge and the co-design of field and lab experiment with stakeholders and not for them. And so we go beyond participation. Stakeholder engagement is understood as a social learning process. And the expected outcomes are business opportunities particularly for weak stakeholders, women and youth, and practical solutions for adaptation and socio-ecological resilience. These are the domains of application. In Spain, climate change vulnerability and limited adaptation capacity of forests that are abandoned, causing loss of ecosystem services fundamental for rural and urban populations. The olive orchards in Greece, addressing soil degradation and reduced agricultural productivity related to climate change and also to the aging of family farming population. And in Sardinia, the silvopastoral systems, the vulnerability to climate change impacts, the declining profitability, and particularly the problems of generational turnover and abandonment of agricultural land, leading again to loss of ecosystem services. In Northern Africa, we mainly are addressing the restoration of degraded ecosystems, with managed aquifer recharge in Tunisia, addressing the UNESCO Argan forest in Essaouira and Morocco, and the desert agriculture in Egypt. So these are the kind of complex challenges in dryland socio-ecological systems where biophysical and social drivers are structurally coupled. So in this context, what is co-design? There is a recent meta-analysis of 88 Scopus papers that have been done by these German authors that I think is very useful for us to reflect today. They classified different co-design practice into two big groups, one related to interventions and the other related to co-created research agendas. I will go briefly through these different concepts. Within the interventions, there are co-design practices that are researcher-led, in where stakeholder engagement is just consultative. Participants do not contribute to the design and the decision-making. They are just providers of feedbacks, and they are just considered as end users. So the solutions are for them and not with users developed. And the empowerment of weak stakeholders is seldom a rationale. In another tradition of understanding, the co-design is design-led, so led by the design of the project and practice-oriented, so very much related on an iterative process, open with fuzzy front end, so initial step of innovation, less research, less science, more practical solution, almost no reflection. The dialogue with stakeholders is about problem solving, and the empowerment and the ownership of what they are doing or the practical solution are, anyway, motivations for the co-design process. Another possibility is that the co-design is framed as a transformative and transdisciplinary intervention. And this is what Living Lab pretend to do. So it's an iterative process organized by transdisciplinary teams, seeking long-term transformations in living labs. practitioners and researchers equally contribute to the knowledge generation. Social learning and ex-post reflections are embedded in the design, and there is a joint problem framing before design solutions emerge. So the motivation is to create a dialogue and to empower weak stakeholders, particularly women and young people. And this is what the ambition of SALAM MED is to work within this kind of conceptualization. Another type of co-design is totally social science-driven intervention, often based on single events in which stakeholders are engaged. The research practice is totally controlled by only social scientists, and the stakeholder consultation, stakeholders are just consulted by researchers and not involved in the decision making. So design is unclear, the reflection is rare, and the idea is to identify best solution for end users. So empowerment in this case is not a motivation. These four I have just described briefly are about intervention. The second group is about co-design for the co-creation of research agenda. And this is a different situation in which co-design is understood as a first step of knowledge co-production. Design is understood as framing complex research problem. Mutual learning is an important motivation. Exploration of option is not a topic at this stage. And there is a focus on problem awareness and stakeholder capacity and social justice. So the final recommendation from this paper is that co-design should be framed as in-depth scientific concept that must meet certain quality criteria. Researchers should examine the theory of co-design, considering the key components, disclose the researcher's own understanding of key terms and support reflection, and reveal the underlying ontological and epistemic assumption of the research. This is an invitation that we are embracing in our project, and I invite to consider this also for future research. A final statement is about the living labs and the specific features of rural living labs versus, for instance, urban or industrial living labs, which at the moment are the majority of living labs worldwide. The green characteristics are specific of rural living labs. Higher level of scientific research needed, high uncertainty due to exogenous factors that we cannot control, and complex governance. So we are launching, and this is the last slide. I invite you to take this QR code. We are launching an online service on rural living labs, trying to promote, understand how living labs are understood within the research practice, either in Horizon or in Prima, with the objective to capitalize the experiences on rural living labs on complex environmental issues, with particular focus on soil and water, to learn from each other's experience. The terms of reference are in the questionnaire that you are all invited to fill. And depending on the contribution that the different research teams will provide, they will be also co-author of this large authorship paper that we aim to publish in the next months. Thank you very much for your attention.